You know, Sandra, it's a dangerous world out there.
I can handle myself.
I'd hate for something to happen to such a promising officer. Offering you a chance to advance your career, Sandra.
I appreciate the offer, sir, but I can't accept it under these circumstances.
You will regret this.
By the time the first streaks of orange touched the sky, Sandra had been driving for nearly 3 hours. Her stomach growled, but hunger was drowned out by a knot of tension that hadn't loosened since the call. Houston rose in the distance, the glass and steel catching fire in the sunrise. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like a warning. She exited into a part of town she knew only by reputation. Industrial blocks where warehouses sat shoulder to shoulder, chain-link fences topped with razor wire. Places where no one cared if a building's windows were blacked out. Voice: turn left. 2 more blocks. Park on the east side. She obeyed, pulling into a cracked asphalt lot littered with cigarette butts. A single building stood ahead, its paint peeling, a rust-red door breaking the monotony of gray concrete walls. Voice: leave your phone in the car, walk to the red door. She set the phone on the passenger seat, took a deep breath, stepped out. The air smelled faintly of oil and rust. The building's walls loomed high, the red door like a mouth waiting to swallow her. Her boots clicked softly on the pavement as she walked, each step heavier than the last. She reached the door, paused, knocked once. It opened. Sandra Lopez had just stepped out of her world and into theirs. And the thing about crossing that line? Sometimes, you can't step back. There's a moment before you step into a place like this, when your gut tells you to turn back. It's the same voice that's kept you alive this long. Sandra heard it, and she walked in anyway. The red door shut behind her with a heavy metal click that sounded too final. The air changed immediately, colder, sharper, carrying the faint sting of bleach and something metallic underneath. She found herself in a narrow hallway, the kind where the walls seemed too close, painted in a dull gray that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. The single bulb overhead flickered, buzzing in a lazy, uneven rhythm. A man stood at the far end. Not tall, but solid, shoulders filling the frame of his black hoodie. His face was hidden by the shadow cast from the bulb. Man. Sandra Lopez. Not a question. Her jaw tightened. She didn't give him the satisfaction of a reply. He turned without another word and walked away, the soles of his boots making a dull, deliberate sound against the concrete. She followed, each step echoing just slightly out of sync with his, like a heartbeat chasing another. Every cop learns to read rooms. This place? It didn't want to be read, which meant someone had gone out of their way to hide the story. The hallway opened into a warehouse space, wide, dim, the kind of place where shadows had weight. Corrugated steel walls rose around her like the inside of a shipping container that had swallowed the moonlight whole. Against one wall sat a folding table, bare except for a glass ashtray and a bottle of water. 3 metal chairs. No Michael. The man in the hoodie stopped beside the table. Man. Sit. Sandra stayed standing. Where is he? The man tilted his head slightly, as if amused by her refusal, then sat down himself. Man. You're here. That's the important part. Sandra, you called me, you said, man, I said he's alive, that hasn't changed. She felt her fingers twitch toward the knife in her boot but forced them still. Not yet. A second figure emerged from the shadows to her left. A woman this time. Tall, blonde hair tied back in a tight braid. She carried a manila folder. The blonde set the folder on the table and opened it with slow precision, sliding a single photograph across the scratched metal surface. Sandra glanced at it. Michael, eyes half closed, blood at the corner of his mouth, duct tape binding his wrists. The shot was close enough to see the pulse in his throat. He was alive, but not well. Relief isn't always clean. Sometimes it's tangled up with fear. Seeing Michael breathing didn't make her feel safe. It made her wonder what they wanted badly enough to keep him that way. Sandra, what do you want? The man leaned back, folding his hands like they had all the time in the world. Man, you're a detective. That means you know things. Access to places, access to files. We need a file. She shook her head. I can't just... Man, you can, and you will. Or the next picture we send you won't have his eyes open. The blonde slid another paper across the table, a printed case number. Sandra recognized the format immediately. Internal evidence log. Her pulse kicked up. This was bad. Very bad. Sandra, this is sealed. Man, not for you. We've done our homework. She felt the walls closing in. Breaking into a sealed evidence file wasn't just illegal, it was career suicide. Worse, it was the kind of move that got you blacklisted in every precinct in the state. But Michael's face from the photograph burned in her mind. There's a point where you stop weighing the odds. You just start counting the ways you'll hate yourself later. She took the paper. I need proof he's still alive when I deliver. The man smiled faintly. You'll get it. The blonde closed the folder, tucking it under her arm. The man stood, signaling the conversation was over. Man, you'll hear from us. A door on the far side of the warehouse opened, and sudden daylight spilled in. A different exit from where she'd entered. She walked toward it slowly, resisting the urge to look back. Outside, she found herself in an empty alley. The door slammed shut behind her, locking automatically. Her Honda was parked 3 blocks away, right where she'd left it. She unlocked it with shaking hands. Voice over shift. She came looking for Michael. She left with a deadline, a case number, and a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. The drive back was a blur of freeway signs and half-formed plans. Her head pounded. Every scenario ended the same way. Michael hurt, her career destroyed, or both. Her phone buzzed once. A text. No number, just another warning. Don't be late. She pulled into her apartment complex just as the sun tipped high enough to bleach the sky. The normalcy of it hit her like a punch. Neighbors walking dogs, kids on bikes, the smell of coffee drifting from someone's open window. She walked up to her unit, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The note from the night before still sat on the table. Now, it had a twin, an identical piece of printer paper with a single line, 24 hours. Some clocks tick louder than others. This one? She could feel it in her bones. The line you can't uncross. Every choice has a weight. Some you carry in your head, some you carry in your chest, and some dig their claws in so deep you start to forget what you looked like before you made them. Sandra didn't sleep, not for lack of trying. She lay in bed until the digital clock on her nightstand ticked past 3 a.m., staring at the shadows on her ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, Michael's photograph flashed in the dark, his lips parted like he was trying to speak. When dawn finally pried its way into her apartment, it didn't feel like morning. It felt like an extension of the same night. She made coffee she didn't drink. She paced the length of her living room, the case number from the man's note burning a hole in her mind. Sealed evidence, internal files. It wasn't just bending the rules, it was breaking them clean in half and throwing away the pieces. There's a voice every cop learns to hear, the one that says, "Walk away." Sandra heard it, but it was Michael's voice that was louder. She pulled up the precinct's secure portal on her laptop. Typing in her credentials felt like a confession in itself. She navigated past the case summaries, deeper into the restricted evidence logs. There it was. Case number 4117 Delta. Flagged in red. Sealed, do not access without authorization. Her cursor hovered over the file. She felt the pressure in her chest spike, like her ribs were trying to warn her. Click. The screen blinked once, then loaded. Photographs, witness statements, forensics, and then a single name buried halfway down a transcript. She froze. She knew that name. Everyone in her precinct did. It belonged to someone you didn't touch unless you wanted your career, your safety, and your sanity shredded in record time. Sometimes you find the thing you're looking for. Sometimes it finds you. She downloaded the file, encrypted it, and slid it onto a flash drive. The weight of the small metal stick in her palm felt heavier than her service weapon. She was about to eject it when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Good girl, now drive. No address, just an attached location pin. The spot was across town, a strip of warehouses she knew well, places where no one asked questions and the rent was paid in cash. She drove with her eyes flicking between the road and the rearview mirror. 2 cars back, a black sedan stayed with her through 3 turns. It could have been nothing. It could have been everything. She tested it, pulled into a gas station, pretended to check her tires. The sedan rolled past without slowing. Her pulse stayed high anyway. The pin dropped her in front of a different red door. This one was flanked by 2 security cameras. No visible guards. She knocked once. The same blonde from before answered, braid tighter than yesterday, eyes colder. Blonde. You have it? Sandra held up the flash drive. Where's Michael? The blonde stepped aside without a word. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke. The man in the hoodie was at the same table, except this time, he wasn't alone. A third figure sat beside him. Older, in a tailored suit, face too still, like he'd practiced every expression before wearing it. Some people take up space without moving. This one made the air around him thinner. The suited man gestured to the chair opposite. Sandra sat. Suited man. Do you know what you've given us? Sandra. I know you have my fiance. The man's smile didn't touch his eyes. Suited man. We have many things, detective. Whether he's still one of them depends on you. The hoodie man took the flash drive from her hand and slid it across the table to the blonde, who disappeared into a back room. Sandra's fingers curled into fists under the table. I've done what you asked. The suited man tilted his head slightly. Suited man. Not quite. We'll need one more thing. A package. You'll know it when you see it. Sandra's breath went sharp. I'm not your errand girl. Suited man. No, you're someone who understands what happens when people stop being useful. He slid a phone across the table. A cheap, prepaid model. Suited man. We'll call, you'll answer, or Michael won't. That was the moment. The one where she should have walked. Should have thrown the phone in his face and taken her chances. But should is a word that doesn't mean much when someone's already got their hands around your life. The blonde returned, nodded once to the suited man. Whatever was on that drive, it was what they'd wanted. Sandra stood. I want proof he's alive. The suited man reached into his pocket, slid a photograph across the table. It was new. Michael, same duct tape, new bruises, eyes open, looking directly at the camera. She didn't know if that made her feel better or worse. Outside, the daylight felt wrong. Brighter, harsher. Like the world knew what she'd just done. She drove aimlessly, trying to quiet the noise in her head. But every street looked like it had eyes. Every parked car felt like it could be waiting. She caught herself checking the mirror every 15 seconds. By the time she reached her apartment, the sun was dipping low, bleeding orange across the skyline. She parked, sat in the driver's seat for a full minute before getting out. At her door, something made her stop. The welcome mat was crooked. She never left it that way. Her hand went to her knife. She eased the door open. The apartment was silent. Too silent. On her kitchen table, where the 2 previous notes had been, was a third. The same plain paper, the same font. This one said, "You're being followed." Paranoia is a lot like gravity. Once it gets a hold of you, you don't climb out. You fall.